technological innovation does not benefit society evenly. There are typically groups of people that are historically left behind. And that's what Somi Arian's really passionate about. She is a tech philosopher and the founder of InPeak. And her mission is really to help educate and bring as many people along to technology innovation as possible. And well, right now, she's focused on Web3 technologies, given everything that's going on in the space, metaverse. She's also looking at things like embeddable chips, Neuralink, things like that, and helping educate people and equip them so that they can be successful as technological innovation continues to happen and happens at a rapidly increasing pace. And so we have a really deep conversation about the philosophical side of technological innovation. Somi has some very unique points of view and goes very deep about her own journey and how she, as a refugee from Iran, immigrating to the United Kingdom, becoming a naturalized citizen, still struggles today and is part of the reason why she's so passionate about bringing more and more people along. It started specifically with women and it's now expanded to anyone and helping grow the community around technological innovation and ensuring that people really understand these new technologies as they come out, how they can use them, and how they can be on the forefront of these various different innovations. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Silicon Alley Podcast featuring the Somi Arian. Are you interested in growing and scaling your business? Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast, where you'll hear from entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and top performers on what it truly takes to grow and scale a business. You'll walk away with actionable insights you can apply in your own business and life. Now to William Glass, the CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Somi, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's exciting. Let's go.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you tuning in the midst of a heat wave in London right now. It's very, very hot. I was just over there, so can definitely attest that London's not built for this type of weather.
Definitely not. I gotta tell you, like my fan is off right now because we are recording, and I'll be pressing on as soon as we finish.
Yeah, it's okay. So if you start to glisten, it's not because it's a great conversation. It's just getting really hot.
It is. I'm sure it is that too, but you can tell already that I'm like so shiny and like sweaty.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you bearing through and sacrificing the fan for about a half hour here. Somi, I'm really excited to dive in. You've got a really interesting background, having done a documentary, TED Talks. You've got this new company that's really focused on emerging technologies, which right now, as we talked about, is Web3 and the associated tech, and just really, really accomplished. And I love what you're building. One of the things that really struck me is the way that you describe yourself, right? So, and let me pull this up so I get it right. But you describe yourself as a transition architect for a new era of human evolution as we merge with technology. And I'm really curious how you settled on this definition and if you could kind of unpack what that means.
Yeah, it was actually when I was writing my book, I was like trying to explain what it is that I do actually, yes, okay, I'm a tech philosopher, so everybody understands technology and they understand philosophy, but there's more to it. I feel like I have a role to play in this life, and I feel that, there is a reason. Look, I'm an atheist, so I don't even consider myself necessarily spiritual or anything like that, but there is a philosophical kind of thing behind it where I just feel that there's a reason why I was born here at this time, right? And the kind of unique background that I come from, the way that I had to go through so many transitions in my life, like constantly from, I was born during the war, and then a war between Iran and Iraq because I was born in Tehran, and then I since I was like 6 years old, my parents had to send me to another area, so I had to leave my family to just to survive essentially, And that was like one transition that was like really, really difficult. And then of course, as I grew up, then later on, so many different types of transitions that I had to constantly go through. But the biggest one was that I came to the UK with no family. So as an immigrant, I learned so many things about being constantly in transition. I felt like, I guess probably I still don't feel like I have any roots in some ways. Like for example, recently I wanted to go to New York City for NFT NYC, and I wasn't given an ESTA, even though I'm a British citizen. But I was denied an ESTA because I'm born in Iran. So they said that you need to have a visa. This was not the case last time when I went to the US in 2017. But that is another example of like even as a British citizen, I don't feel like I am fully a British citizen like everybody else, because I was born in Iran. So it's like being just the fact of being born in Iran itself is like you're constantly in transition. You're always in exile. You're in exile from your own country, your own family, your own kind of background, and then wherever you go, even if you become the citizen of that country, you're never first class citizen almost, right? So I've learned to live with this constant idea of being in transition. And when I look at what's happening in the technology space, I feel like as humans, that's where we are, that I see a parallel between how I don't have a sense of belonging, and I feel like I'm constantly in transition, but I've made that my reality, and like essentially I have come to peace with that, and actually I've made it work for me and thrive in that in many ways. I can see in a similar way that's what's happening to us as humanity with technology, because we can't settle on anything. You can think of like since 1970s, 1960s, 70s, or after the World War, like it's been constantly one technology after another, and as soon as you come to get used to one thing, another disruption comes. And this has been the trend of technology. Actually, if we zoom all the way out and back, it has been going on for centuries and thousands of years, but it has never been so fast. So it's getting faster and faster and faster. And one of my values in life is speed. I love speed, and right. So I don't have time for people who are slow, who can't get their hair around things. I'm like, ugh, just can't wait. So I think that's another reason why I feel like so essentially a transition architect is somebody who can help others get through these transitionary kind of periods, and understand that the transition never ends. That's why I didn't call it transformation. That's why I never really liked the term digital transformation. It's like the way I see it, there is no transformation because it's only transition. You're just transitioning from one thing to another.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. And obviously it sounds like the term transition goes really deep, right? It's not just technology. And I appreciate you, kind of being vulnerable and sharing your story. I'm curious just to like dig in there. How has that really affected you? And like, because like it's not easy, right? Like
No.
being denied the ability to go to NFT NYC, which is an event that I'm sure you were very excited about, and
Yeah.
all the stuff for something that you can't really control,
Yeah.
and you can't control. Like, and I think there's a very good parallel there when we start thinking about technology. But I'm just curious how that's just personally affected you and how you approach the world.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult because it was not just that I was excited. I spent about $300,000 worth of NFTs that I would, that I probably wouldn't have bought at that time. I bought it because I wanted to get into a lot of different, events that were related to each of those communities. Just one of my NFTs, my proof pass, I spent about $140,000 to get into the proof event, and then I couldn't go. So this has been the story of my life. It's been constant. It took me 11 years to become a British citizen. For those 11 years, I couldn't travel a lot of places. I always needed a visa. So I thought that was finished when I became a British citizen, but apparently not, right? So yeah, in terms of how it feels, it's very tough. It's very tough. One thing I've learned is in life is not to complain and just get on with it and just find other ways. Like if the door's closed, I will knock windows. Eventually some windows will open, right? So ultimately, the way I see it, ultimately it doesn't matter because like I really think of life as a game. Which is funny because I never played games. Like I grew up, never playing, never. Like I've never played games growing up. Like the only experience I ever have with any game is when I was with my ex-partner. His children were playing Minecraft, and they really wanted me to play with them, and I tried to play, and it was terrible. Like I was like just dying on the first, within the first half hour, and they helped me get some watermelon and then like get to the next thing, But that was like the only thing. So, but I think of life as a game, and I think like if it's like you have to navigate it. There's no point in getting upset about. Of course, you get upset. I did cry when I couldn't go to New York City for this. I was upset because I had spent all that money and prepared for it so much. But on the other hand, like yes, you momentarily you get upset, but really when you zoom out, it's like it really doesn't matter where you come from. Everybody faces challenges. Like you may be born in with an American citizenship, in a very wealthy family. You may be white, male. Like everything may feel like none of the other challenges that people from other countries and backgrounds may have. But you may have other things. You may have your own demons inside you. You may have mental health challenges. There's like everybody has got challenges, and I kind of believe that life almost gives you enough challenges that you can handle. Like everybody has got their own challenges. So if you think of life as a game, for every person it's a matter of like zooming out and kind of seeing, okay, this game that I'm in. And in some ways, I have this hunch that we live in a simulation, that if that is the case, whether it is or it is not the case, but if that is the case, then we are like practically playing a game essentially, right? And everybody is part of that game is like finding your purpose and then you're navigating your way towards it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you don't need games if we're already in a simulation and everything's a game, right? So
yeah, exactly. I do feel that everything is a game. I do feel like building a business is a game. Everything is a game, really, and it's just fun. Ultimately, it's like most of the time it's not a matter of life and death. Ultimately, like whatever happens, you can still make the best of it, and it's about how you react to it rather than allowing it to get to you. So I don't let things get to me.
yeah, I love that. It's really important being able to control what you can control, and then obviously putting in perspective that most things in life are not life and death, and so you can push through even if it's not what you hoped for. Ideal outcomes or obstacles get thrown in your way.
Yeah, and I think most importantly also is that anytime in life something has been denied to me, in the end it has worked out. Like like I've gotten something better, and something has happened that has made it even better in some ways. So it's for example, I didn't go to NYC. I didn't get COVID. Everybody who went there.
A lot of COVID after NFT NYC, yes. So
Yeah.
that's a bright side. So back to the transition. So let's transition to the transitioning work that you do. Can you talk to me a little bit about why it's so important to focus on like the technical transition and why these new technologies are really important for people, entrepreneurs, to really pay attention to?
Yeah, definitely. So look, I think something really big is happening in this century. I feel like we're transitioning into a new kind of species, I think we are already not Homo sapiens anymore. We are something else. Like, I rely on my technology so much, to a point that, like, for example, my Aura Ring, right? Every morning I wake up, the first thing I check is my Aura Ring. um, you know um, like the scores that it's given me, based on like how ready I am, how well I slept. It's constantly changing me. There's so many other things, like I'm surrounded by technology, but I think it's more than that. Like, it starts with wearables, but it in you think about things like Neuralink, or and it's like, also remember that as humans we are both chemical and electrical. So it's not just about electronics, it's also about chemicals. For example, I'm taking supplements that are definitely changing the way that my brain functions, like, and like my longevity. Like, for example, I did a test the other day, well, about a year ago actually. I did a test that measured my biological age as opposed to my
Numerical
chronological
or
age. Yeah, yeah,
chronological.
exactly. And my biological age was 12 years younger. That's because of the kind of technologies that I use, and the things that I do, the supplements that I take. I'm more productive now than maybe many years ago. So in many ways we are changing. So there's a combination of genomics and electronic kind of technologies, so information technology, genomics, and a combination of all of these things. And I guess in the coming years also nanotechnology. A combination of all of these things is changing us as humans, and we are living longer. We are spending more and more of our time in the digital space. We are changing. Our culture is changing. The things that we value, like our JPEGs that we spend, like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or tens of thousands of dollars, buying these JPEGs. In the past, we communicated who we were, through the physical things that we would wear, and things like that. But now it's more about what we do in the digital space, and how we look after ourselves living in this new digital space. So it's a super super interesting thing, because we still have physical bodies. I don't know for how long more we will continue to have these physical bodies, because I just wonder, like, if we get to a point that we find out that digital is so much less burdensome in many ways, like, like, digital stuff don't die as easily. Like, if you could still have the same kind of experiences that you have in the physical world, because look, think about it, like, our experiences are ultimately, they are still electrical signals. So, like, for example, when I drink this water, I feel less thirsty, and I feel, better hydrated, and I think of that in an organic way, right? But truly, when we zoom out, really there is no such thing as organic. It's only for information. Ultimately, it's just information, and it's all actually electronic signals. So we need to better understand this organic life that we are living, and see whether we can somehow improve that experience through digital technologies. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't thought about that level, because then at that point, I mean, it's essentially the Matrix, right? Where you plug in
Yeah,
and then it doesn't, assuming that you
we
can
are not
control the
all.
simulation in a way that I guess you can kind of control in the Matrix too. Interesting. So what does this mean though, right? So like you're thinking about like we're obviously optimizing for the digital world makes a lot of sense, right? We're transitioning there. That's why it makes, you're willing to spend $140,000 on a proof pass so that you can be connected and have that connection to other people that are in this digital space and have that, that access, right, to Kevin Rose and his project and all the people that are a part of it. What does all this mean? Like, how do I approach this as an entrepreneur? Are we going there very quickly? Like, it seems like there's a group that is very like forward thinking, and then the majority of people aren't quite there yet. They still think of them as silly JPEGs and all that stuff. Like, how do you actually approach this transition, right? Because it's not happening evenly,
Yeah,
first off.
definitely not happening.
And And then, as you said, we're in a constant transition, so we're not really sure what the future will look like. It's all kind of us pontificating.
Yeah, so part of the reason why I spend that money to be in that place is because I want to have a front row seat, and I'm building my own platform as well. So I want to make sure that I learn from the best, that I'm surrounded by the top kind of people who are innovating in this space. You're right in that this is not even, and I think it's not going to be even, because we know that from the Luddite story that there's always going to be people who are going to be against technology. And in the past it somehow worked out eventually, because in their lifetime eventually they would get to a place where they would get some degree of understanding, and then some level of benefit from it. The problem right now is speed. The thing that I'm obsessed with is speed. Because of the speed, many people are going to be left behind. And this is not something that I'm not the only one saying it. For example, Yuval Noah Harari talks about it in his book *Sapiens*, that and Homo Deus, actually, that he believes that about 90%, maybe more of society are essentially going to be rendered irrelevant, and and that's worse than death, because like, what's the point of living if you are not participating and staying relevant. And when I came to that understanding, at first I found it very, very hard. I actually wrote a long article about this, that was beginning of COVID-19. It was like 4,500 word article. It's in on my LinkedIn, and it ends with a open letter to Ray Kurzweil, actually. When I was writing that, and at that time I was just really upset about the fact that so many people are going to be left behind. But over time, as I started to try and explain these things to more and more people, and see the lack of interest most of the time, and the fact that when the pandemic happened, within like the first few weeks, Netflix added so many subscribers, right? So many people chose to spend that time where they were getting free money to spend it sitting home watching Netflix. And that's exactly when I literally, so actually a bit before that, I stopped watching any kind of Netflix series or movies or anything like that. And then I started building this new business. So throughout this time, I built a business that's currently valued at 25 million, raising investment at that amount. And it's just about how you choose to participate and spend time, right? So nobody made me do that, and I had the choice to sit down and watch Netflix and entertain myself with TikTok, or go out and learn about these things and build a business. So the way I see it is that, look, I want to help the people who want to be in that top 10%. Right, I can't solve the world's problems. When I wrote that article, I was very upset about the top, the bottom 90%. I believe that everybody should have the opportunity, but we don't live in a we don't live in a fair world. It's never been fair. I grew up with nothing. Nobody around me spoke English. If you see a picture of where I was born and brought up, you never believe where I've gotten. I have worked incredibly hard, and I still do. I'm working 15 hours a day. I have made so many sacrifices. I decided not to have children. Like, there's so many things that I left my country of origin. I'm not saying that everybody should make the same kind of sacrifices, but I want to state the reality. And the reality is that technology is what it is. It's moving extremely fast. You have to either get on board or not. If you don't, nobody's going to wait for you. It's not going to wait for you. This is evolution. It's evolving very fast. So you need to decide whether you want to be a passive observer or an active participant. If you are a passive observer, then you can't complain that things are not going the way that you hoped, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, interesting thought. I'm curious, do you, so like, when we think about technology and transition, like, you hear a lot of people talk about, bringing more people over, and rather than leaving people behind, and making sure that there's meaning and connecting with current experiences. Like, is that important? Because it almost sounded like this was like technology for technology's sake, progress. Is that what you're advocating for, or more like?
Look, I'm not advocating anything because
Okay.
as a tech philosopher, I just see the reality as it is, observe it, and explain
Okay.
it. Right. I can sit here and advocate all day that we need to take everybody along the ride with us. The truth is that technology is not going to wait for us. Okay, like it's not. You cannot slow it down. It is what it is.
Mhm.
So you have to understand it, accept it. It's kind of like when you go back to the 12th century, the invention of the fueling mill, was one of the first, like it was like a precursor to the Industrial Revolution. So when the fueling mill was created, it put a lot of people out of a job.
Mhm.
Would you say that we should not have gone ahead with that technology and innovation because we wanted those people to keep their jobs? Because if you would say that, then today, you wouldn't have washing machines, right? Like you wouldn't have like, dishwashers, right? Like, so this is what my point is as a tech philosopher, and I want to make it really clear. I am not advocating for technology. I'm saying technology has a life of its own, and you, as a human being, as an organic, piece of
Mhm.
life, you have the ability to use it to, co-evolve with it and make it so that you have a better life. Because you may, some people may glorify the past. This is the problem we have, is that as humans we always like to glorify the past and romanticize the things, the nostalgic things, right? Like, oh, wasn't life great when we all sat around fire and and we had these childhood dreams or things that we did. Well, it was nice. It was a time of its own. It's past now. Now we are going to be in the metaverse. Now we are going to be creating new relationships, new friendships, a new way of being, So it's like you can't stop it. You just cannot stop it, right? So yes, of course I would love to bring everybody with me, but the reality is that people aren't coming. You're like you can do what you want to, you can do the best that you can, but we can't slow it down. So I'm here to help anybody who wants to stay ahead of the curve, but I can't convince people who don't want to be.
Fair enough. I feel like, well, I mean, if you think about the speed, right? Because the time is the piece, right? Now everyone uses, well, not everyone, but majority of the world uses washing machines, to go back to your point, right? Because they've proliferated, they're also at an accessible level, they make life better. So it almost sounds like there's a caveat though, because you're still saying that the technology's got to make life better, or else technology for technology's sake,
Yes,
like why would you create it?
technology is going to make life better, not your life. Okay? So life, like, what is the evolution of life? If you think, what is life? Life is the opposite of entropy, right? Like from the beginning of the universe has been evolving and going towards a state of maximum entropy. Then random particles get together and they form clusters, and then these clusters try to overcome entropy. When these clusters would create some form of unity, some form of cohesion in trying to overcome entropy, that is what we call life. Okay, and then life evolves, and then we have intelligent life, right? The next level from life is intelligent life. So this is the universe evolving, right? And that's what life is. So technology is going to make life better, but by life I don't mean human life. I mean life in terms of evolution of life, in terms of the experience of life, and the evolution of life, in how we overcome entropy.
Got it. So
Does that make sense?
no, it does. It
Like
does. It sounds like,
for example, our lives, we could say that like it compare us to apes, right? Compare us to, to our
bored apes or just regular? I'm just kidding.
no, the regular apes, right? Yeah, compare us to like regular apes, right? So you can say that our life, well, life has as a whole has become better with humanity because we figured out how to cook food. And that was one of the earliest technologies that we had. So we figured out how to cook food, and because we managed to cook it, were able to release new nutrients that we would not have been able to access without cooking that food. As a result of that, our brains got bigger, and so then we went to the next iteration of the apes, that was Homo sapiens. So in a similar way, now we are doing something similar with nanotechnology, with genomics, and with artificial intelligence, and that's what's happening, right? So we are becoming something else. And like, we need to try and come to terms with that. Look, I know it's not a popular thing, right? Like, nobody wants to know that they're going extinct, but we are going extinct. We are becoming something else. We have to, I think, like, the difference between us and apes is that we now have that level of understanding that we can see what's happening to us, and we have the choice to not let that happen, but actually join that evolution and try to give it shape, give it direction, to make sure that at least our values continue, right, in
Yeah.
creating this next.
So it's interesting. So it sounds like, have you read The Selfish Gene by Richard
Of course.
Dawkins? Are you familiar with that
Classic.
book?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Classic.
it sounds very similar, right? Like, at the end of the day, the reason it's the genes that is optimized for, right? It's not about you as an individual. That's why, a mother's willing to sacrifice their life for a baby, or like, you're willing to, like, put your line up, because it's ultimately it's the gene that's driving it, which sounds very similar. And it's not necessarily your species genes, but genes and DNA in general.
Yes,
Is
life in
is
general.
is how we're defining life here.
Yeah.
So if we're evolving, what are we becoming? What's your, have you thought about that at all, Somi, in terms of like how you would define this merge between Homo sapiens and technology?
Yeah, it's fascinating. You know what? Like, I don't mind dying. The only thing that makes me sad about dying is not being able to see that. So I just want to live long enough to see where that goes. Um, Look, this is like, it's just so deep. I think about it so much. I think in this century we will see the first real cyborgs, like true cyborgs that are born cyborgs, right? Like, I think we will see that happen. I don't know. I think nobody knows, right? For sure. But we are definitely, so I think that what will happen is that those of us who have fully organic bodies, that we are gonna start incorporating more and more electronics into our bodies. Right? It starts with what you wear, and then we will potentially start, incorporating that, and we will try and lengthen our life for as long as possible. But eventually we will die, right? And the next generations that are coming in, when I look at my friends who are having babies right now, like, I can totally, like, I can see that those babies are gonna become, like, they are absolutely going to be having electronics into their body, or like some way of, like, exactly the Neuralink,
The implants, yeah.
yeah, implants, and direction that is going. And yeah, I think we are going to increasingly become digital, and incorporate digital life into our lives. In terms of exactly how that looks, I don't know, but it's fascinating, and I just love it. I love being here in this time in history. I feel like I was literally, like, designed to be in this space, because I just love it. It's just so exciting, man. It's so cool, like, to be able to see in real life, in reality, like, to be able to actually see it. It's like to see history happening. It's kind of like seeing a simulation on the computer happening in your, like, say, if you had the whole evolution of life paid in front of you. So this is fascinating to be at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm curious, because you mentioned the simulation again, right? There's the what is it, when you think about like astrophysics and like how the universe works, that there is a case for a multiverse, right? There's an infinite number of, right, iterations of choices that we've made, everyone else has made, that's like on to infinity. Is that something that Do you believe in that, or what are your thoughts
Look,
around that? And
look.
like, is that what technology is getting us to, where you can, right? Because computers essentially run simulations to figure out the
Yeah.
best path for a lot of different things, and that's how algorithms work.
Yeah. Look, I never say I believe in something because I don't believe in anything. Like, how can I believe in things? Like, I don't, people say, do you believe in technology? Like, how can I believe in something? It's not a faith, right? Like, I have hunches. Like, that's what I say. I have hunches. I think, I feel certain things. I may believe that it may be possible, but I can't believe, like, because how can I know, right? But
But is belief knowing? Like, belief isn't knowing.
I think belief is faith.
Just
It's like, to me, when somebody says, I believe something, like it's having faith, right? I don't feel like I feel it, I have hunches, but how can I be sure, right? Like, the whole point, and I grew up in Iran, right? It's a
okay.
Muslim country, right? So
Yeah.
people say they have faith and they believe in something, right? They believe in God. Like, how can you believe in God? Like it's not it's not falsifiable, right? So most of these things are not falsifiable. So but I have hunches and I have feelings. Like, I feel like certain things may be the case. So for example, we are trying so hard to try and go to other planets, and there are people that think that the problem of life persevering is is an engineering problem. I think it may not be an engineering problem. Like, if we truly, people. I was actually talking to some people on the Proof Discord the other day about this, and they were like, why does it matter? Like, if it doesn't matter that whether we are in a simulation or not. Who cares? Like, at the end of the day, why should we even think about it? The reason why we should think about it is that if we truly are in a simulation, then it may be the persistence of the experience of life that we are pursuing. Maybe that's not an engineering problem. Maybe it's a different kind of problem, to solve. Like, maybe it's not about physically going to another place. Like, we know that in quantum mechanics, for example, that we have things like teleportation and things like, being in two places at the same time, right? So maybe it's not necessarily about creating like big spaceships and going from one planet to another. We know about wormholes. We know, like, there's like, I feel like there's possibly other ways of solving the puzzle that we are trying to solve. The puzzle of science, which is like really what we are trying to solve. Like, who are we? What are we? Why are we here? Is there other worlds? Are there parallel worlds? Why do we experience 3 dimensions plus the 4th dimension of time? Why is there such a thing as a passage of time, right? Like, and we know that, for example, as Professor Brian Greene talks about, you can think of time as, rather than a flow of time, as more like a loaf of bread. That's like, then you have these slices of the bread, right? And each slice of time is one of those slices of the bread. So there's no such thing as mathematically, you could perceive that there's no such thing as a flow of time, but we perceive a flow of time. Nietzsche, my favorite philosopher, he's got this idea of eternal recurrence of the same, and he's saying that essentially he uses it in a metaphoric way, but it's very reminiscent of what Professor Brian Greene talks about. And he says that when you are dying, ask yourself, this life that I lived, would I live it again and again and again? And if the answer is yes, then you have that's the answer to your morality, and that you have lived a great life, right? And I think that's a beautiful way of metaphorically thinking about it, but I think there is some scientific truth to that as well, potentially.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing, Somi. Last question I've got for you is just from like a success perspective, right? You kind of talked about this mission of helping transition, right? This continuous transition. Like, how do you define success? So if you're looking back on your life and you ask that question that Nietzsche said, well, how do you know? What does success look like to you?
Yeah, I think for me, success is waking up every morning being excited about the day, like, and going to bed so excited that you can't wait for the next day. You know, like that, you know that every day is so interesting, so exciting. You're always meeting new people. You're having great conversations like this, you know, and you can talk about and think about things that are fascinating. Like to me, it's about having the luxury, right? That success is about having the luxury of feeling awe, right? Like you know, because if you are living in a place where you don't have enough to eat, that you don't have enough things to get by, then that's not a good place to be. Like you need to have you know, you need to have that kind of base to feel okay, to feel good, so that you can start thinking about, wondering about life and, you know, science and technology and things like that, right? Like it would have been very, very hard for me to pursue what I am doing now. Probably impossible if I was still living in Iran, you know. So success is for me in this case right now, even though I wasn't able to travel to New York, but at least, you know, I live in a free country. I have built 2 successful businesses, you know, and I'm living a fascinating life, and I have the luxury of waking up every morning thinking about these things, you know, meditating and like pondering and feeling this sense of awe about life and what it is and the nature of reality.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you sitting down. This has been a lot of fun, and thanks for taking us in a different direction than what I anticipated. But it was fun to kind of, you know, go through these different thought experiments and share what you see from the philosophical side of technology. Any last words, and then how can the audience connect with you outside of this podcast?
Sure, yeah. So Somi Arian, Somiarian, Somi Arian. You know, just Google it; it will come up all of my different things that I do. InPeak is the platform I'm building for helping people to stay ahead of the curve in emerging technologies. That's in peak, as in, you know, being at the peak of something. So and that's about getting towards the peak of humanity. I feel like we're getting towards the peak of humanity, and then the next S curve starts, right? So that's you know, I that transition part is like, you know, we're getting to the top of the S curve. That's like that little part before the next S curve starts. That's where my life is, and my goal is to try and help people be, you know, in a position that they can then go into the next S curve. Yeah, so that's, and Twitter, you know, YouTube, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Somi. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Cheers.
On your way out, please share the podcast with others. It's the only way that the community grows and others hear these incredible stories from entrepreneurs and top performers. And of course, pound that subscribe button so you get notified when episodes drop every Friday. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Have a very profitable day.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate.